Welcome to the Sleepy Scientist channel, a quiet corner where the world unfolds slowly, fact by fact, layer by layer. Tonight, the story waiting for you is all about canyons, those deep, majestic wounds carved into the very flesh of the planet, where stone holds its breath and time becomes visible. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from this evening. Perhaps you're in a bustling city, far from any vast wilderness, or maybe you're lucky enough to be near one of these great stone valleys, feeling the presence of its ancient silence. If you find comfort in these journeys, I'd be so grateful if you could gently tap the like button and subscribe. To those who are already subscribed, thank you kindly. You're the steady banks to this channel's flowing river of stories, and a small reassurance. I hope this tale of deep time brings a sense of peace, a reminder of the world's grand, slow rhythm. But if it pulls you into a state of wonder, at least you'll drift into tomorrow with a new perspective nestled in your thoughts. So, how does the earth, patient and relentless, come to wear such profound scars? Canyons are not created in a single cataclysm. They do not simply crack open into being, but are instead slowly, meticulously revealed, like a sculpture emerging from a block of stone over millions of years. They are absences made tangible, spaces defined not by what is there, but by what has been taken away. In this series, we will trace their story from the first drop of rain that fell on a high plateau to the towering, sun-baked cliffs that command our awe today. This is not just a tale of water and rock, but of unimaginable spans of time, a drama written in the language of erosion, where continents are slowly dismantled, grain by grain, and carried to the sea. We will follow canyons from their earliest beginnings as tiny cracks through their dramatic growth into the planet's most profound landscapes. Along the way, we will pause on rocky ledges and by silent rivers, considering not only the geology but also the myths, the cultures, and the humbling perspective these depths have offered humanity. This journey is both scientific and reflective. It is about hydraulic action and bedrock, yes, but also about what it means to stand at the edge of such a void, symbols of depth, challenges to explore, sanctuaries of solitude, and archives of ancient worlds. Each chapter will bring us a little closer to understanding these giants, not in a rush but in a steady, meandering rhythm, as though floating down a gentle river. So let us begin this descent into knowledge one step at a time, into the story of how canyons are born. Look at a photograph of a great canyon from above. What do you see? From that distant, godlike perspective, it looks like a gash, a tear, a deep and violent scar slashed across the skin of the earth. It suggests a moment of immense pain, a rupture that must have shaken the world. And in a way that's true. But the pain is not a sudden one. It is a chronic, persistent ache that has lasted for millennia. The violence is not a quick blow, but a slow, ceaseless gnawing. This initial impression, the canyon as a wound, is our first and most powerful connection to these formations. They feel like the Earth's vulnerabilities made visible, places where the planet's rocky crust has been peeled back to reveal the layers of its history beneath. A scar is a memory written on the body, a story of healing and damage. And a canyon is precisely that, the Earth's memory written in stone. It is a story of removal, of loss, but also of incredible exposure and beauty. To understand a canyon is to learn to read this scar. The varying colors of the rock walls are like different stages of healing, each hue representing a different epoch, a different environment that once existed here. The sheer depth of the chasm speaks to the immense volume of material that has been carried away, a testament to the patience and power of the elements. The way the light falls into its depths, illuminating some walls while leaving others in shadow, mimics the way time itself reveals some truths while keeping others hidden. But unlike a scar on skin which fades with time, a canyon deepens. It is an active, growing testament to the forces that shape our world. It is a living wound, one that continues to be sculpted by every rainstorm, every gust of wind, every freeze and thaw. It is not a relic of a single event, but an ongoing process, a conversation between the solidity of rock and the persistence of the elements. This chapter is our first step to the edge. We are looking down from the rim, feeling that mix of awe and vertigo, that primal understanding of depth and time. We are seeing the canyon for what it appears to be, a gash in the earth's skin. In the chapters to come, we will begin our descent. We will meet the architects of this grandeur, water, wind, and ice. We will learn how this apparent wound is not a sign of decay, but one of the most magnificent and creative processes on our planet. It is the Earth's way of writing its autobiography, and we are fortunate enough to be able to read it. So take a breath here at the rim. Look out across the expanse. Feel the scale of it beginning to settle in your mind. This is not just a hole in the ground. It is a doorway into deep time, and we are about to step through it. It is a comforting simplicity to think of a canyon as the work of a single river, patiently carving its way downward over the eons. And while water is indeed the master sculptor, the principal architect of these great abysses, it does not work alone. To stand at the rim and see only the work of water is to hear a single instrument in a vast, silent orchestra. The full symphony of a canyon's creation is composed of many players, each with their own unique tool, their own tempo, and their own part to play in the slow-motion demolition and revelation of stone. If we are to truly understand the canyon, we must learn to recognize the signature of each of these artists. We must listen for the faintest notes in this geological orchestra. The most obvious force, the lead violinist, is of course flowing water. Its work is direct and powerful. A river is a chisel of liquid sandpaper. It doesn't so much cut the rock as it grinds it away. The water itself carries the tools, sand, pebbles and boulders that are dragged and bounced along the riverbed, abrading and scouring the channel deeper with every passing year. In flash floods, this process becomes a violent, roaring torrent of demolition, capable of moving massive boulders and scouring out entire sections of a canyon in a single, furious event. But its most profound work is done in the quiet times, the persistent, patient, day in, day out grinding that defines the relentless pace of geological time. But water has a quieter, more subtle partner, one that works not in the channel, but on the cliffs high above, rain. When rain falls on the dry, often porous rock of a canyon rim, it doesn't just run off. It seeps. It infiltrates tiny cracks and fissures, seeking a path downward. This moisture, seemingly gentle, begins a chemical conversation with the stone. It slowly dissolves certain minerals, particularly in limestone, weakening the cement that holds the rock together. This is the silent chemical weathering that prepares the stage for the more dramatic acts of erosion to come. It is the slow, inexorable rotting of the very fabric of the cliff face. Then comes the wind. In the high deserts where many canyons form, the wind is a constant presence. It is the invisible sandblaster. It picks up fine grains of sand and silt, the very products of the rivers and the rain's work, and hurls them against the canyon walls. You can sometimes hear it, a faint, hissing whisper against the rock. Over centuries, this constant abrasion smooths surfaces, undercuts cliffs, and etches intricate patterns into the softer layers of stone. It sculpts the details, polishing the grand shapes carved by water into finer, more elegant forms. It is the artist who comes in after the rough shape is hewn to sand and smooth it to a finish. In colder climates or at higher elevations, another powerful force enters the fray. Ice. Water may be patient, but ice is brutally strong. It works through a simple, irresistible physics. When water seeps into those cracks widened by rain, it sits there. When night falls and temperatures drop, that water freezes. And as it freezes, it expands with incredible force, an act of silent, prying violence. This process, called frost wedging, acts like a crowbar in the stone. It pries apart cracks, splits off boulders, and shatters cliff faces. Over countless freeze-thaw cycles, ice breaks down the rock into manageable pieces, creating the tailless slopes of rubble that gather at the base of cliffs, ready for the river to eventually carry them away. And we must not forget the most fundamental force of all, the one that often provides the initial lift, tectonics. The earth itself must provide the canvas. Before a river can carve down, the land must be raised up. The great uplift of a plateau, driven by the immense, slow-motion collisions of tectonic plates, is what gives the river its gravitational potential, its height, and thus its power to cut deeply. Without this uplift, the river would meander lazily across a flat plain, creating a floodplain, not a canyon. The tectonic forces are the stagehands who raise the entire set into the spotlight, allowing the drama of erosion to begin. Finally, there is perhaps the most unexpected architect, gravity. It is the silent foreman on this worksite, the ultimate arbiter of what stays and what goes. Gravity is what pulls the rain downward into cracks. It is what gives the river its flow and its power. It is what tugs at a rock, undercut by water or wind until it finally gives way, crashing down in a cloud of dust to the canyon floor. Every grain of sand, every falling pebble, every rock slide is an act of gravity, tirelessly working to pull everything down to the lowest possible level. Together, these forces form a seamless collaborative partnership. The rain and ice weaken the rock, the wind details it, the river carries the debris away, and gravity ensures it all moves in one direction, downward. They are the many architects of stone, each essential, each leaving their mark on the grand design. To see a canyon is to see the masterpiece, but to understand it, you must learn to see the individual hands that built it. There are canyons, and then there is the canyon, a place so vast that the human mind struggles to fit it all in at once. The Grand Canyon is not merely a geographical feature, it is an idea, a monument to deep time so profound that to gaze into its depths is to look directly into the past, to see the very bones of the continent laid bare. It is the ultimate expression of the canyon's nature, and it tells its story not in words, but in layers. A silent, stone narrative of almost unimaginable age. To stand on its rim is a humbling experience. The scale is deceptive. The opposite. Wall seems close enough to touch, yet it may be miles away. The Colorado River, the mighty artist responsible for this masterpiece, is a mere shimmering thread of silver, barely visible from the top. Between that ribbon of water and the rim lies the story. Over a mile of vertical history representing nearly 2 billion years of the Earth's past. It is the closest thing our planet has to a visible timeline. This is the canyon's great magic. It is an open book. Each distinct band of color, each stripe on the colossal wall is a chapter in an ancient story. The darker, jagged rocks at the very bottom, the Vishnu schist, are the prologue. This is the basement rock, the foundation. It was once ancient mountains, taller than any today, which were worn down, buried, baked under immense pressure and heat, and transformed into this dark, metamorphic rock. To see this layer is to peer back into a time before complex life, when the planet was a volatile and young world. As your eyes travel upward, you journey forward through time. The layers become sedimentary, telling tales of environments that have come and gone. The bright red and orange layers of the Supai Group and Hermit Shale speak of vast sprawling coastal plains and muddy river deltas of a time when this very spot was not a desert, but a warm, low-lying swamp buzzing with early life. The fossils found here are not of fish, but of ferns and the tracks of primitive reptiles. Then the dramatic, sheer cliffs of redwall limestone. This layer, a tough, grey-white rock that often appears stained red by iron oxide from the layers above, tells a completely different story. It speaks of a great inland sea. This limestone is composed of the compressed skeletons of countless marine creatures, brachiopods, crinoids, corals. To see it is to understand that this arid, soaring landscape was once the bottom of a clear, shallow tropical ocean teeming with life. The rock itself is made of life. Higher still are the pale, sandy layers of the Coconino sandstone. Its cross-bedded patterns, like petrified sand dunes, are the frozen footprints of an ancient desert, a Sahara that existed long before humans walked the earth. The fossils here are not shells, but the delicate trackway patterns of scorpions and other desert-dwelling creatures, captured in perfect detail as they scurried across the dunes. Each band, from the deepest basement rock to the Kaibab limestone that forms the rim you stand on, is a snapshot. A desert, a seafloor, a river delta, a swamp. They stacked up, one upon the other, over hundreds of millions of years as the land sank and rose and was flooded and exposed again and again. For eons, this entire story was hidden, buried under miles of subsequent rock, lost to time. Then the uplift of the Colorado Plateau gave the river its gradient, its power, and the patient work of erosion began not by building up, but by stripping away. The Grand Canyon is not a monument to construction, but to revelation. The river, aided by rain, wind, and ice, has acted like a master restorer, carefully removing the eons of debris to reveal the masterpiece hidden beneath. It has unbound the Earth's history book and laid its pages open to the sky. This is why the Grand Canyon transcends geology. It provides a tangible, visceral sense of deep time that a textbook or a number on a page cannot. You can see the time. You can point to it. You can trace a single layer with your finger across the vast expanse and know that this line represents 1,000,000 years of deposition, 1,000,000 years of history. It is a perspective that shrinks human concerns to their proper size. Our entire species' history is but a thin, invisible line at the very top of this immense sequence. To understand the Grand Canyon is to understand that the world is not static. It is a dynamic, ever-changing entity. The rocks beneath our feet are not permanent. They are temporary, fleeting arrangements of molecules on an epic journey. The canyon is the greatest teacher of scale we have, a scale of both space and time. It reminds us that we are brief visitors in a story that began long, long before us and will continue long after. It is the grandest of them all, not just for its size, but for the profound story it tells, written in layers of stone and time. If the Grand Canyon is a cathedral, then the Colorado River is the devout, relentless force that carved it from the solid rock. To see it from the rim today, a thin, shimmering ribbon of green and brown snaking through the monumental silence, it is difficult to grasp the immense power it holds. It appears tranquil, even fragile, but this is an illusion. This river is the patient sculptor, the master artist whose tool is not a chisel but time itself. Its work is the definition of persistence, a slow, grinding performance that has lasted for 6,000,000 years and continues with every passing second. The story of the Colorado River is a tale of perfect alignment. It required a specific and rare convergence of events. First, the land had to rise. The tectonic uplift of the Colorado Plateau, starting around 70 million years ago, was the essential first act. It provided the stage, tilting the land upwards and giving the river the one thing it needed most, a steep gradient. A river on a flat plain meanders lazily. A river on a slope becomes a cutting tool. The greater the height, the greater the gravitational pull, the faster the water flows, and the more power it has to carry sediment and scour its bed. But the river did not simply find a pre-existing crack and start carving. The prevailing scientific belief is that it established its course as the land was rising. This is known as the theory of antecedents. Imagine a river flowing calmly across a flat landscape. Suddenly, and with imperceptible slowness, the land beneath it begins to swell upward like a loaf of bread rising in an oven. A less powerful river might be diverted, sent off in a new direction around the growing obstacle. But the Colorado was persistent. It had enough flow and force to cut downward at a rate that matched the uplift of the land. It essentially stayed in its original path, soaring through the rising rock, determined to reach the sea. It was a race between earth and water, and the river miraculously kept pace. Its primary tool is not the water itself, but the load it carries. The Colorado River is never just water. It is a thick, rich slurry of liquid mud, sand, pebbles, and boulders. This sediment is the grinding paste, the abrasive, that does the real work. During the spring snowmelt or a sudden desert thunderstorm, the river transforms. Its flow can increase 100-fold, and its color turns a thick, churning chocolate brown, so dense with silt that a paddle stood upright in it would not sink. In this state, it is a liquid soar. The suspended sand and gravel act like billions of tiny teeth, sandblasting the riverbed, scouring and polishing the hardest granite. Larger rocks and boulders are rolled and dragged along the bottom, acting like colossal chisels, pounding and fracturing the bedrock. This process, known as downcutting, is the river's primary means of sculpting the canyon's depth. But it doesn't work in isolation. The river is an opportunist. It seeks out weaknesses. It finds the fractures and fault lines that were created by the tectonic upheaval and focuses its energy there, exploiting every crack, every softer layer of shale or sandstone. It doesn't carve a smooth, even channel. It selectively erodes, which is why the canyon's profile is a series of dramatic cliffs and slopes, the cliffs being the resilient layers like limestone and sandstone, the slopes being the softer, more easily eroded shales and mudstones in between. The river's work is also one of transportation. It is not enough to simply grind the rock into sediment. It must also carry it away. The Colorado River is a massive conveyor belt, hauling an unimaginable volume of rock debris out of the canyon and eventually depositing it in a vast delta that once flourished in the Gulf of California. It is estimated that every single day the river moves over 500,000 tons of sediment through the Grand Canyon. This removal is critical. If the debris simply piled up at the bottom, the river would eventually choke on its own waste, becoming clogged and unable to cut deeper. The sculptor must constantly clear away the rubble to continue its work, yet for all its power, the river is a prisoner of its own creation. It cannot escape the deep, narrow channel it has spent millions of years carving. It is now trapped within the very walls it made, forced to follow the intricate path it etched into the rising plateau. From the serene vantage point of the rim, we see the result of this epic struggle, a river that appears tiny and insignificant, dwarfed by the grandeur of its own life's work. But this is the final irony of the sculptor. It has created a masterpiece of such scale that it itself seems small within it. The Colorado River teaches a lesson in the power of consistency. It is not the strongest force on earth, but it is one of the most dedicated. It does not take days off. It does not cease its work. For 6 million years, through ice ages and droughts, through the rise and fall of species, it has flowed. It has grinded and scoured and carried. One grain of sand at a time, one pebble at a time, it has patiently, inexorably sawed a mile-deep gash into the continent. It is a testament to the idea that a constant, gentle pressure, applied over a sufficient span of time, can achieve the most monumental of results. It is the patient sculptor, and the Grand Canyon is its enduring, magnificent masterpiece. After the overwhelming panoramic grandeur of a place like the Grand Canyon, where the scale is so vast it defies human comprehension, there exists another type of chasm that offers a completely different, almost intimate experience. These are the slot canyons. If the Great Canyons are the epic novels of geology, then slot canyons are its haikus, short, profound, and breathtakingly beautiful. They are not defined by their length or depth, but by their narrowness, their sinuous curves, and their most magical property. They are places where water does not just carve stone, but where it learns to dance with light. To enter a slot canyon is to leave the known world behind. You step from the open desert, a place of sun and wind and sprawling vistas, into a cool, narrow crevice that might only be wide enough for a single person to pass. The world immediately shrinks. The sky is reduced to a thin, winding ribbon of blue far above. The sounds of the desert, the wind, the distant cry of a bird fade away, replaced by a profound, echoing silence, broken only by the sound of your own breath and the soft scuff of your footsteps on sand. You are not just walking on the earth, you are walking into it. The formation of a slot canyon is a story of focused, relentless violence, followed by long periods of serene, patient beauty. It begins with a crack, a tiny fracture in a vast sandstone plateau, perhaps caused by the subtle shifting of the earth. Then the rain comes. But in the desert, rain does not often come as a gentle shower. It arrives as a torrential, furious downpour, falling on the hard, impermeable rock of the plateau where it cannot soak in. The water gathers, rushing across the barren stone, seeking a path of least resistance. It finds the crack, and it pours into it. What happens next is a frenzy of hydraulic power. The flash flood, funneled and accelerated by the narrow walls, becomes a pressurized liquid drill. It is no longer just water. It is a thick, abrasive slurry of sand, gravel, and rock, forced through the narrow passage with the force of a fire hose. This sandy torrent sandblasts the walls, scouring and polishing them, undercutting curves and drilling the crack deeper and deeper into the bedrock. The process is not one of slow wearing, but of sudden, explosive events. A single hour-long flash flood can do more work than 1,000 years of gentle erosion. The canyon is born in moments of terrifying power, though its creation is measured over millennia. The result of this violent birth is a place of impossible smoothness and graceful, flowing form. The walls of a slot canyon are rarely jagged. They are sinuous, curving, and impossibly smooth to the touch, polished to a soft, matte finish by countless sandblasting floods. They feel organic, like the inside of a petrified serpent, or the architecture of some long-vanished liquid civilization. The canyon floor is often soft, deep sand, the settled sediment left behind by the last flood, a quiet bed for a now absent river. But the true magic of the slot canyon reveals itself when the sun reaches its zenith, high above the desert floor. This is when the dance begins. A narrow beam of sunlight penetrates the deep slit, striking the top of the canyon wall. From there, it reflects. Light bounces from wall to wall, filtered and softened by the fine, suspended desert dust in the air. It illuminates the canyon not with the harsh, direct light of the outside world, but with a soft, diffuse, and magical glow. And then there is the color. The sandstone itself is a canvas of iron oxides, rust, essentially, lending it shades of red, orange, and ochre. As the light reflects and reverberates through the canyon, it picks up these colors, intensifying them, transforming the stone into something that seems to glow from within. The walls can appear to be on fire with a deep, luminous crimson, or cool to a soft, ethereal lavender, depending on the angle of the sun. The light becomes a tangible thing, a liquid gold pooling in the curves of the rock, highlighting the undulating patterns carved by ancient floods. To stand in a slot canyon at noon is to stand inside a kaleidoscope made of stone and light. It feels sacred, hushed, like being in the nave of a cathedral built by time and chance. The outside world, with its concerns and its haste, ceases to exist. There is only the curve of the wall, the coolness of the stone, and the ever-shifting, silent dance of light and shadow playing across a billion grains of sand. The slot canyon is a perfect paradox. It is a landscape born of terrifying raw power and chaotic floods, yet it presents itself as a place of ultimate peace, serenity, and delicate beauty. It is a testament to the idea that violence, when channeled and focused over immense time, can create not just destruction, but breathtaking artistry. It reminds us that the Earth's most profound beauty is often hidden, waiting in narrow, secret places where water has learned to dance with light. Of all the slot canyons that seam the Colorado Plateau, there is one that stands apart, not for its size, but for its perfection. A place where the abstract artistry of water and stone has been refined to its most exquisite form. This is Antelope Canyon. It is more than a canyon. It is a gallery. More than a geological feature, it is an experience. To walk through it is to walk through the inside of a sculpture, a place where the stone seems to have flowed and solidified into graceful, liquid forms. It is the ultimate expression of the slot canyon's beauty, a masterpiece of focused erosion. Antelope Canyon is not one, but two separate canyons. Upper Antelope, or say Biganellini, the place where water runs through rocks, and Lower Antelope, or Has d'Estoises, spiral rock arches. Both were formed by the same relentless process, yet each possesses its own unique character and soul. For the Navajo people, on whose land these canyons lie, they are not just scenic wonders. They are sacred spaces, deeply woven into the spiritual and cultural tapestry of their history. They are places of reverence, where the power of the natural world is felt in its most concentrated form. The rock itself is the protagonist of this story. This is Navajo sandstone, a vast formation that dates back to the Jurassic period, when immense sand dunes, like those of the modern-day Sahara, stretched across this land. Over millions of years, those dunes were buried, compressed, and cemented into solid rock. But they never lost their essence. The cross-bedding, the delicate layers and angles within the rock, are the frozen fingerprints of those ancient winds. This sandstone is hard enough to hold a vertical wall, yet soft and uniform enough to be sculpted into impossibly smooth, flowing shapes. It is the perfect canvas. The artist, once again, is the flash flood. In the vast watershed above the canyon, sudden, violent rainstorms have, for countless millennia, gathered their force. The water, unable to soak into the hard desert rock, funnels into the slightest depression. By a twist of geological fate, the precise path this water took again and again was through this particular seam in the Navajo sandstone. And with each flood, the transformation deepened. The water, carrying a thick, abrasive slurry of sand, acted like a relentless liquid sander. It didn't just carve the canyon, it polished it. It sanded the walls to a soft, flawless finish, rounding every edge, smoothing every surface, and carving the undulating, sensuous curves that define the canyon's form. It is nature's version of a master woodworker, patiently sanding a piece of fine-grained wood to a silken feel. Entering Upper Antelope Canyon is a gentle descent into another world. The entrance is wide and the path is mostly level, with the canyon walls rising elegantly overhead. Here, the light show is legendary. During the summer months, around midday, beams of direct sunlight pierce the narrow openings at the top of the canyon. These shafts of light, dramatic and perfectly defined, plunge into the depths, illuminating particles of dust dancing in the air. They are known as God rays, and they transform the canyon from a beautiful space into a celestial one. The light reflects off the orange and pink walls, filling the entire chamber with a warm, ethereal, glowing radiance. The stone itself seems to be the source of light. Lower Antelope Canyon offers a different journey. Here, you descend into the earth, climbing down ladders and metal stairways into a deeper, more complex labyrinth. The path is narrower, more serpentine, and the walls often twist into dramatic, spiraling formations that give the canyon its Navajo name. The experience is more intimate, more exploratory. You feel the coolness of the deep stone, and the play of light is subtler, creating pools of shadow and highlights that accentuate the incredible texture of the walls, and what textures they are. The water has not merely made the walls smooth, it has decorated them. The flowing, liquid shapes carved into the stone look like petrified waterfalls. In some places, the patterns resemble the elegant curve of a seashell's interior. In others, they mimic the flowing folds of draped silk or velvet. The color is a symphony of desert hues, warm reds, oranges, and purples, streaked with darker, desert-varnished bands. It feels impossibly organic, as if you are walking through the inside of a living, breathing organism. To be in Antelope Canyon is to understand that erosion is not merely a destructive force. It is also one of the most creative forces on the planet. It is a sculptor. The flash floods that carved this place are violent and terrifying, yet their lasting legacy is one of sublime peace and breathtaking beauty. The canyon is a testament to the idea that true artistry often emerges from a dialogue between immense power and infinite patience. Antelope Canyon reminds us that the Earth's greatest masterpieces are often hidden, waiting in secret slots in the desert. They require us to step down from the sunlit world, to quiet our minds and to look closely. It is a place that appeals not to our sense of scale, but to our sense of wonder. It is sculpted sandstone, a dance of light and shadow, and one of the most beautifully refined scars on the skin of the earth. In the great symphony of erosion, water is the powerful, percussive force, the crashing cymbals of a flash flood, the deep, persistent cello note of a river. But if water is the percussion, then wind is the woodwinds. It is the constant, whispering, ethereal presence that plays an endless, subtle melody against the stone. It works not with the roaring, obvious power of a torrent, but with a patient, invisible persistence. It is the unseen artist, the subtle finisher, the invisible sandblaster that details the work begun by more violent forces. To understand the wind's work, you must first learn to see its tools. Walk across a desert plateau near a canyon, and you will feel them. Fine grains of sand, and even finer particles of dust. These are the products of other erosional forces, the shattered fragments from frost wedging, the debris left behind by a retreating river, the pulverized remains of rock broken down by the relentless expansion and contraction under the desert sun. The wind takes this discarded, fragmented material and gives it a new purpose. It arms itself with the planet's own rubble. When the wind blows across this loose sediment, it doesn't just move it, it sorts it. The finest dust, light as thought, can be carried high into the atmosphere, traveling thousands of miles to form distant loess deposits or simply coloring a sunset. But the sand grains are heavier. They are too large to be lifted high, yet too small to resist the wind's push. Instead, they perform a fascinating maneuver called saltation. They leap. A gust of wind lifts a grain of sand a short distance into the air. It travels a foot or two, then arcs down to strike the ground. Upon impact, it dislodges other grains, sending them on their own short, hopping journeys. A desert floor in a strong wind can appear to be alive, a shimmering, low-flying cloud of hopping sand grains, a collective, flowing entity. Now imagine this low-flying, abrasive cloud encountering the wall of a canyon. This is where the sandblasting begins. The hopping, bouncing grains of sand are hurled against the rock face. Individually, each impact is webuzudao, a tiny, insignificant kiss against the stone. But over time, over centuries and millennia, the effect is profound. It is death by a million tiny cuts. The constant, relentless sandblasting etches away at the rock, smoothing rough surfaces, polishing facets, and slowly wearing the canyon walls back. The wind is a master of selective erosion. It seeks out weaknesses. Softer layers of rock, like sandstone, are abraded much faster than harder layers, like limestone or granite. This selective sandblasting can undercut cliffs, create dramatic alcoves, and accentuate the layered structure of the canyon walls. It sculpts the details that water alone cannot. It is the reason why the surfaces of desert rocks can feel so surprisingly smooth, almost soft to the touch, like stone that has been meticulously hand-polished. One of the wind's most signature artworks is the ventifact, a stone that has been faceted and polished by wind-blown sand. If a rock is left in one position for a long time in a desert, the wind-blown sand will sandblast the side facing the prevailing wind, creating a flat, polished face. If the wind direction shifts or the rock moves, a new facet can be created. Some vent facts end up with multiple intersecting polished surfaces looking like large, abstract gems sculpted by nature. They are direct, hand-sized evidence of the wind's patient, abrasive power. The wind also works in concert with other forces. It is the great cleaner, the remover of debris. After a rock slide or a flood, the wind sets to work, sweeping away the fine dust and sand, clearing the stage and exposing the fresh rock beneath to begin the cycle of erosion anew. It piles sand into dunes at the mouths of canyons or in sheltered areas, creating ever-shifting landscapes within the larger, more permanent stone one. But perhaps the wind's most important role is as a collaborator with water. In the desert, water is rare but catastrophic. Wind is constant. It is the interim force, the one that works every single day in every season, preparing the rock for the next great flood. It widens the tiny cracks that water seeps into. It smooths the channels that water will later rush through. It is the steady background effort that makes the occasional, dramatic events of water so effective. To witness the wind's work, you must learn to see its effects rather than its action. You won't see the canyon walls visibly shrinking, but you will see the smooth flowing curves on the upwind side of a formation. You will feel the polished surface of a canyon wall that feels like stone silk. You will see strange, streamlined rocks that look like they have melted in the sun. You will see the constantly shifting patterns of sand dunes at a canyon's base. The wind is the quietest architect. It has no roar, only a whisper. It has no sharp tools, only an endless supply of tiny, bouncing grains. It works not in moments of dramatic fury, but in an endless, patient, invisible campaign. It is the definition of persistence. It asks not for your attention, but for your time. And given enough of it, this invisible sandblaster can carve away mountains, detail cathedrals of stone, and write its subtle, elegant signature across the face of every canyon in the desert. In the desert, the work of erosion is a drama of heat and dryness, of flash fires and abrasive winds. But in the high altitudes, the frozen realms where canyons cut through mountain ranges, another sculptor takes the stage. This one works not with liquid flow or constant whisper, but with a patient, silent, and unimaginable force. This is ice. If wind is an invisible sandblaster, then ice is a slow-breaking hammer. Its power is not in movement, but in expansion. Not in flow, but in the immense, quiet pressure of a single, simple transformation, water turning to ice. The process begins with a seemingly gentle act, water, from rain or melting snow, seeping into the smallest of cracks. A tiny fissure in a granite cliff face, a hairline fracture in a sandstone wall, the porous space between grains of rock. It is a liquid, finding its way into the most intimate vulnerabilities of the stone. It feels innocuous, harmless. But this is merely the loading of the weapon. Then the temperature drops. As night falls in the high country, the world freezes. The water trapped within those stony pores undergoes its miraculous destructive change. It expands. When water freezes, it increases in volume by about 9%. This expansion is not a gentle nudge. It is an explosive force, generating pressures of thousands of pounds per square inch. It is enough to split steel pipes, to shatter pottery, and to pry apart the hardest granite. The ice acts like a wedge, a pry bar inserted by nature into the heart of the rock, levering the crack wider with the silent, relentless strength of physics itself. This process, known as frost wedging or ice wedging, is the ice hammer's primary blow. It is not a single event, but a rhythmic, cyclical pounding that echoes with the turning of the seasons and the daily swing from day to night. Each freeze-thaw cycle hammers the crack a little wider. Over hundreds, thousands of winters, the tiny, insignificant hairline fracture becomes a substantial crevice. The crevice, hammered again and again, becomes a gaping joint, and eventually a large block of rock, undercut and isolated by this incessant prying, gives way. It breaks free from the canyon wall and crashes down in a roar of dust and rubble to the talus slope below, ready to be carried away by water or glacier. The work of ice is most visibly dramatic in colder climates and at high elevations. In the Himalayas, the Andes, the Alps and the Rockies, the upper reaches of canyons are often littered with these talus slopes, great aprons of jagged, angular rock fragments that have been hammered from the cliffs above by countless freeze-thaw cycles. The cliffs themselves are often sharp, jagged and fractured, their faces scarred by the recent loss of immense blocks. This is the landscape of the ice hammer, raw, sharp and fresh, where the work of demolition is visibly ongoing. But ice's work is not limited to this mechanical hammering. Its most grand-scale sculpting comes from its glacial form. When snow accumulates over centuries in a high mountain cirque, it compresses into a river of ice, a glacier. This glacier, flowing with imperceptible slowness down a pre-existing river valley, becomes the most powerful erosive tool on Earth. It is no longer a hammer, but a bulldozer with a sandpaper bottom. The immense weight of the ice grinds against the canyon floor, plucking rocks from the bed and walls and using them as giant grinding tools to scour and deepen the valley into a characteristic U-shaped cross-section. Broad, flat floors with steep, towering walls. Yosemite Valley, perhaps the most famous glacial canyon in the world, was not carved by its meager river, but by the immense glacier that once filled it, grinding its way down from the Sierra Nevada high country. The legacy of the ice hammer is one of raw power and stark beauty. It creates landscapes of grandeur and drama. It is a slower, more methodical force than water, but its results are no less profound. It works in the quiet of the deep freeze, in the unseen expansion within a crack, in the slow, gravitational flow of a glacier. It reminds us that cold is not an absence of energy, but a different form of it. That stillness can be violent, that the simple, everyday act of water freezing is one of the fundamental architects of our world. So the next time you see a photograph of a sharp, jagged peak in a high canyon, or stand beneath a cliff face littered with fresh, angular rocks, remember the silent hammer. Remember the expansion in the dark. Remember that the mightiest of rocks is no match for the patient, persistent force of a molecule of water, changing its state again and again and again until the stone itself yields. Ice does not flow, it breaks. And in breaking, it sculpts some of the most breathtaking and formidable canyons on Earth. While the Grand Canyon tells a story of patient, aqueous erosion, An Antelope Canyon speaks of fluid, artistic polish. There is another canyon on our planet that tells a far more violent and restless story. This is the Colca Canyon in the Peruvian Andes. To behold it is to witness a landscape that is still screaming. It is not a scar that has begun to heal, but a fresh, gaping wound ripped open by the titanic forces that are still, even now, building the spine of a continent. This is a canyon born not just of water, but of fire and brute force. It is a tectonic wound. The story of Colca begins not with a river, but with a collision. The entire Andean mountain range, the longest continental mountain chain in the world, is the result of the relentless, slow-motion collision between the Nazca Oceanic Plate and the South American Continental Plate. The Nazca Plate, denser and heavier, is diving beneath its continental neighbor in a process called subduction. But this is not a clean, smooth process. It is a gargantuan, grinding struggle, a battle of unimaginable force that crumples the leading edge of the South American plate, thrusting it skyward to form the soaring peaks of the Andes. The Earth itself is being folded and fractured here, and the Colca Canyon is one of the most dramatic tears in its fabric. This ongoing tectonic upheaval is the first and most important architect of Colca. The land here is not stable. It is rising rapidly. Even as the Colca River works to cut its channel down, the very ground beneath it is being pushed up. This creates a phenomenal race between the saw and the stone. The river is sawing downward, but the stone is rising to meet the saw, amplifying the erosive power and creating a chasm of breathtaking depth. Colca is often cited as one of the deepest canyons in the world, reaching a depth of over 3,270 meters, 10,130 feet, more than twice the depth of the Grand Canyon. This staggering depth is not just a product of erosion, but of this dramatic, simultaneous uplift. Because of this, the landscape feels alive, raw, and unstable. The canyon walls are not the orderly, horizontal layers of the Colorado Plateau. They are chaotic, twisted, and steep. You can see great folds in the rock where entire layers of stone have been bent and contorted by the immense pressure. Fault lines scar the slopes, evidence of the sudden, catastrophic releases of energy that accompany this continental collision. Earthquakes are a frequent reminder that the construction of this landscape is far from over. This is a canyon in the act of being born, a work in progress of the most violent kind. The Colca River itself is a powerful, milky turquoise torrent fed by glacial melt from the volcanoes that crown the canyon rim. But its role feels different here. In the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River is the undisputed master sculptor. In Colca, the river feels more like a partner to the tectonic forces, a powerful tool being wielded by the larger drama of uplift. It is the chisel, but the mountain building is the hand that guides it. The river rushes through the deepest parts of the gash, clearing away the rubble that the earthquakes and uplift provide, constantly working to deepen the wound that the planet is tearing open. Human history here is etched into the very walls of the canyon. Long before the Spanish arrival, pre-Incan and Incan civilizations terraced the canyon slopes into vast green staircases for agriculture. These terraces, still in use today, cling to the sheer cliffs like desperate, beautiful tapestries of life woven onto a backdrop of immense geological violence. They are a testament to human resilience, a declaration that even in the midst of such a raw and powerful landscape, humanity can find a foothold and cultivate beauty. The colonial towns that dot the rim, with their ornate churches, sit perched precariously on this rising ground, their foundations subtly stressed by the relentless forces below. And then there are the condors. The Andean condor, one of the largest flying birds in the world, is the spiritual emblem of Colca. They make their homes in the highest, most inaccessible cliffs of the canyon. To see a condor is to understand the canyon's essence. These massive birds, with wingspans stretching 3 meters, rarely flap their wings. Instead, they ride the thermals, the great columns of warm air that rise from the deep canyon floor as the sun heats it. They soar effortlessly on the very breath of the canyon, circling upward on the same energies that are still shaping the land. The condor's flight is a perfect metaphor for Colca itself. It is a dance on the edge of violence and grace, of powerful upheaval and breathtaking beauty. The bird does not fight the thermals, it uses them. Similarly, the canyon is a product of immense violent force, yet it results in a landscape of sublime, awe-inspiring grandeur. To visit the Colca Canyon is to feel the Earth's pulse. It is to stand on the edge of a continent that is still being forged. It lacks the serene, ancient feeling of the Grand Canyon. Instead, it feels urgent, powerful, and immediate. The wind whistling through its depths sounds like the planet itself is breathing. It is a stark reminder that our world is not a static museum piece, but a dynamic, ever-changing, and sometimes violent living entity. The Colca Canyon is not a scar from a healed injury. It is an open wound, and through it we can see the beating heart of the earth. There is a moment, hiking along a canyon trail, when the eye is caught not by the vastness of the view, but by a small, intricate detail at your feet. A strange pattern in a rock, a ripple, a swirl, a shape that seems too perfect, too ordered, to be the product of random chance. You bend down, brush away the dust, and there it is. The unmistakable curve of a shell, the delicate feathery impression of a fern, the segmented body of a creature that crawled the earth long before humans ever walked upon it.
This is a fossil.
And in the deep, open pages of a canyon, these are not merely rocks. They are sentences. They are pages in a stone diary waiting to be read. Canyons are the perfect librarians of deep time. Their very purpose, through the act of erosion, is to take the closed books of the Earth's history, the immense buried sequences of rock layers, and open them to the sky. They break the spines of these stony volumes and lay their pages bare for us to read. And within these pages, the fossils are the text. They are the direct, tangible evidence of lives lived and worlds lost. They transform abstract geological time into a story we can touch with our fingers. The process of fossilization is a rare and miraculous event. It requires a precise and fragile sequence of circumstances. When an organism dies, it must be buried quickly by the silt of a river, the sand of a beach, the mud of a seafloor, to protect it from scavengers and decay. Over time, as layer upon layer of sediment accumulates above it, the pressure increases and the chemistry of the buried remains begins to change. Groundwater, rich in minerals, percolates through the sediment. These minerals, like silica or calcite, slowly, molecule by molecule, replace the original organic material of the bone or shell, turning it to stone in a process called permineralization. Or sometimes the organism dissolves entirely, leaving behind a perfect hollow mold in the rock that later fills with minerals to form a cast. It is an alchemy of time and chemistry, a translation of life into stone. In the walls of a canyon, each fossil tells a specific story about its moment in time. A layer rich in brachiopods and crinoids, that was a quiet, clear, shallow sea. The delicate imprint of a fern or the fossilized trunk of a tree, that was a lush coastal swamp or a dense forest. The trackways of a reptile captured as it scurried across a sand dune, that was a vast sun-baked desert. The massive bone of a dinosaur, that was a world of giants, roaming river valleys that have long since vanished. The Grand Canyon is perhaps the greatest fossil library on Earth. As you descend its trails, you literally walk backwards through time, and the fossils are your guides. Near the rim, in the Kaibab limestone, you might find the fossils of marine creatures from a relatively recent 250-million-year-old sea. Descend further to the Hermit Shale and you find the impressions of ferns and the tracks of early reptiles from a swampy delta. Deeper still, the Redwall limestone is almost entirely composed of the fossils of sea lilies, corals and shells from a warm tropical ocean. And at the very bottom, in the hard, metamorphic rock, there is a profound silence. No fossils. This rock is from a time before complex life had even learned to form hard shells, a world of microbes and vast, empty oceans. But fossils are more than just historical snapshots. They are the key to understanding the immense age and the dynamic nature of the Earth. They provide the evidence for continental drift. The same species of fossil fern has been found in rocks in South America, Africa, India, and Australia, proving these now separated lands were once a single, connected supercontinent. They document the great cycles of extinction and evolution, showing how life has been shattered by catastrophes and then slowly, miraculously, rediversified into new and wondrous forms. To hold a fossil is to feel the weight of this deep time. It is to bridge an unimaginable gap. That ammonite, with its perfect spiral shell, once drifted through a warm sea that hasn't existed for 100 million years. The fern whose impression you trace with your finger once photosynthesized under a sun that shone on a world without flowers. These are not just rocks. They are moments. They are memories that the Earth has chosen to keep, preserved against all odds. In the silence of a canyon, surrounded by these stone pages, you become a reader of this grand, epic diary. The wind whispering through the cliffs sounds like the turning of pages. Each fossil is a word, a name, a story from a forgotten chapter. They remind us that the world we know is just the current sentence in a story that is still being written. The canyons, in their profound generosity, hold the book open for us, allowing us to read, to wonder, and to understand our own fleeting place in the immense narrative of life on Earth. We have met the architects, the patient water, the whispering wind, the prying ice, the titanic force of tectonics. But an architect is only as good as their tools. For a river, the primary force of canyon carving, its tools are not forged of steel, but of stone. They are not wielded with hands, but with the relentless pull of gravity. A river's toolkit is deceptively simple: sand, pebbles, and time. Yet with these three simple things, it can accomplish the most monumental of tasks. It can dissect a continent. The work begins not with the river itself, but with its silent partners. High on the canyon walls, frost wedging cracks apart massive boulders. The wind prizes loose grains of sand. The sun beats down, expanding and contracting the rock until it spalls off in thin sheets. This constant bombardment of the cliffs produces a steady rain of debris, a scree of rubble that gathers at the base of the walls.
This is the raw material.
This is the river's quarry. When the rain falls or the snow melts, this debris is mobilized. Water gathers it up from fine dust to massive boulders and delivers it to the main channel. The river now becomes a craftsman with a full toolbox. It is no longer just water. It is a thick, abrasive slurry, a liquid saw whose teeth are the very rocks it is trying to cut. Each size of sediment has a specific job. The boulders and cobbles are the sledgehammers. They are too heavy to be carried far. They are rolled and dragged along the riverbed, a process called traction. With immense force, they smash into the bedrock, acting like pile drivers. They fracture solid rock, prying loose chunks and creating new weaknesses for smaller tools to exploit. The pounding of these massive tools can be heard during a flood, a deep, subterranean, grinding and rumbling that speaks of immense, brutal power. The pebbles and gravel are the chisels and gouges. They are small enough to be bounced along the riverbed in a process known as saltation, but they still carry significant weight and force. They are the primary agents of abrasion, scouring and scratching the bedrock, carving grooves and flutes into the canyon floor. If you were to walk a dry riverbed in a canyon, you might see these parallel scratches etched into the rock, a permanent record of the passage of countless pebbles, all dragged in the same direction by the current. But the most refined tool, the one that does the finest and most persistent work, is sand. Billions upon billions of grains of sand suspended in the water create a powerful, abrasive paste. This is the sandpaper. This is the tool that polishes. As the turbulent water flows, this suspended sand constantly grinds against every surface it touches, wearing down obstacles, smoothing rough edges, and giving the canyon walls and riverbed their often surprisingly smooth, polished finish. A river in flood, running thick and brown with suspended silt and sand, is actively sandblasting its own channel, deepening and widening it with every passing hour. The river also uses the water itself as a tool. This is a process called hydraulic action. The sheer force of the water, particularly when it is forced into cracks and fissures in the rock at high pressure, can literally pry rocks apart. It compresses the air in those cracks, and when the water retreats, the air expands explosively, weakening the rock from within. It's a silent, powerful hammering that loosens the mortar of the canyon's stonework. The most dramatic demonstration of a river's focused power is the pothole. These are perfectly circular, often deep cylinders carved into solid bedrock on the riverbed. They are created when a particularly hard rock, like a piece of quartz or a large pebble, becomes trapped in a slight depression by the current. The swirling water, often carrying sand, forces the trapped rock to grind in a continuous circular motion. Over centuries, this natural drill bores straight down into the bedrock, creating a smooth, beautiful, and profound testament to the river's focused, persistent energy. Yet for all this furious activity, the river's true master tool is time. The sand, the pebbles, the boulders, they are ineffective without it. A single flood does little lasting work, but a flood every year for 1,000,000 years? That is a different story. Time is the multiplier. It is the dimension that transforms a single grain of sand bouncing along a riverbed into an agent that can wear down a mountain. Time allows for the countless repetitions, the infinite number of impacts, the endless grinding that eventually produces a canyon. The river, then, is a master recycler. It uses the rock it has already broken down as the tools to break down more rock. It is a self-sharpening, self-supplying system. The very evidence of its work, the sand, the gravel, the boulders, becomes the means by which it continues to work. To understand this is to see a river in a new light. It is not a passive flow of water. It is an active grinding, cutting, polishing force. It is a craftsman sitting at its workbench of stone, patiently using its simple, brutal tools of sand, pebble, and boulder, and with the unimaginable leverage of deep time, sculpting the most profound landscapes on our planet. Every grain of sand is a worker.
Every pebble is a chisel.
And together, under the direction of gravity and time, they are building a canyon. For as long as humans have gazed into the profound depths of a canyon, we have seen more than just rock and shadow. We have seen meaning. These are not neutral landscapes. They are places that stir something deep within the human spirit, a mixture of awe, humility, and reverence. Across continents and cultures, canyons have consistently been revered as sacred ground. They are cathedrals built not by human hands, but by time and elements, and they have served as the backdrop for our most profound spiritual inquiries, our creation myths, and our searches for meaning. The reasons for this sacred status are woven into the very nature of a canyon itself. Firstly, they are natural thresholds. To descend into a canyon is to cross a boundary, to leave the familiar sunlit world of the everyday and enter a different realm. This descent is a powerful metaphor found in myths and stories worldwide, a journey into the underworld, into the subconscious, into a place of testing and transformation. The canyon floor, with its hidden rivers and sheltered alcoves, feels separate from the world above. It is a place apart, a natural temple complex ideal for rituals, vision quests, and communion with forces greater than oneself. For many indigenous cultures of the American Southwest, canyons are not just sacred. They are central to their very identity and cosmology. The Navajo Nation, within which the breathtaking Antelope Canyon lies, refers to these places as sacred spiritual sanctuaries. They are living entities, places where the holy people dwell and where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds are thin. To enter them is to show respect, to offer prayers, and to seek harmony. The stunning beauty of these places is seen not as a random geological accident, but as a deliberate creation of spiritual forces, a gift to be cherished and protected. Similarly, the Hopi people believe they emerged into this current world from a previous world through a place called Sipapuni, often represented as a small hole in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. This makes the canyon their place of origin, the literal womb of their people. Its layers represent the different worlds of their creation story, and its depths hold the memory of their beginning. For them, it is the most sacred landscape on Earth. This theme of the canyon as a place of emergence and origin is a powerful one. It represents a journey from darkness into light, from the formless underworld into the structured world of the surface. The canyon is the passageway, the conduit of life itself. Beyond creation, canyons have also served as fortresses of preservation. The sheer cliffs provided natural protection. The ancestral Puebloans, often known as the Anasazi, built entire cities into the cliffs of canyons like Mesa Verde and Canyon de Chelly. These were not just practical dwellings. They were communities built in the belly of the sacred. To live in the canyon walls was to live within the earth itself, protected by the stone and close to the spiritual heartbeat of the world. The ruins that remain today still hold a powerful, silent energy, a testament to a people who understood the dual nature of the canyon as both shelter and sanctuary. The sense of awe that canyons inspire is also a form of humility before the divine. To stand on the rim of the Grand Canyon is to feel a profound sense of smallness. Our individual lives, our worries, our triumphs, they shrink to their proper scale against a mile of vertical time. This humbling experience is a cornerstone of many spiritual traditions. It shatters the ego and opens the heart to something vast and eternal. In the face of such grandeur, prayer feels like a natural response. The canyon becomes a place to contemplate not just the age of the earth, but the nature of eternity. This sacred relationship is not confined to the Americas. In Australia, the deep, red rock gorges of the outback are part of the Aboriginal Dreamtime, the ancient creation period when ancestral beings formed the world.
Every rock formation, every waterhole, every twist in the canyon tells a part of that sacred story.
The land is a text, and the canyons are some of its most dramatic chapters. Even for modern visitors who may not subscribe to a specific religious tradition, the feeling of the sacred persists. There is a shared universal language of awe that we speak when we look into the depths. We fall silent. Our voices drop to a whisper. We feel the urge to be careful, to be respectful, to not disturb the profound peace. This is the echo of an ancient recognition. We are in a place that is not entirely meant for us. We are guests in a much older, much quieter house. Canyons, therefore, are more than geological wonders. They are silent libraries of human spirit. They hold the prayers of the Hopi, the stories of the Navajo, the footprints of the ancestral Puebloans, and the quiet wonder of every modern visitor who has ever stood at their edge and felt their own heart open wide. They remind us that the human need for the sacred is often best answered not in buildings we construct, but in the vast, beautiful, and enduring cathedrals that nature has provided. They are scars on the earth's skin, but to us, they have become holy places. If a canyon is a sculpture, then its finish is applied not by a hand, but by the sun. The raw form, the immense depth, the sweeping walls, the intricate curves, is the work of elemental force. But its soul, its ever-shifting mood and breathtaking beauty, is painted by the delicate daily interaction between rock and light. This is where geology transcends into art. A canyon is not a static monument. It is a dynamic canvas, and its colors are not mere pigment, but the very substance of the earth itself, brought to life by the celestial dance of illumination. The first artist is chemistry. The palette of a canyon is mixed deep within the rock over millions of years. The most dominant hue, the warm, glowing red that defines so many desert canyons, comes from iron. Specifically from iron oxide, a mineral we know more commonly as rust. When iron minerals within the rock are exposed to oxygen and water, over immense time, they oxidize, coating the grains of sand or sediment with a thin, persistent film of red. The varying shades, from deep burgundy to bright orange to pale pink, depend on the concentration of this iron oxide and the size of its particles. It is the slow, patient rusting of the continent that gives the canyon its fiery heart. But the palette is far more complex than just red. Manganese oxide contributes darker, bluish-black streaks known as desert varnish, which often stream down cliff faces like ancient, petrified tears. The greens and greys can come from reduced iron minerals or from glauconite, telling a story of environments that lacked oxygen. The stark, brilliant white of a limestone layer speaks of a pure, ancient sea composed of the compressed skeletons of countless marine creatures, free of the staining iron. Each band of color is a chapter of environmental history: a red river delta, a white seafloor, a green reducing swamp, a black desert stream. The canyon wall is a geological manuscript, and its ink is mineral, yet these colors lie dormant in the shadows. They require an activator, a curator, to bring them forth for exhibition.
This curator is light.
The sun does not simply reveal the canyon's colors,
It transforms them. It plays with them.
it is a master of ceremony, and its performance changes with every hour of the day. At dawn, the light is a soft, low-angled brush stroke. It paints the highest rim rocks in a brilliant, glowing gold, while the depths below remain pooled in deep, cool purple and blue shadow. The contrast is dramatic, a clear line between the awakening day and the retreating night. The colors are not yet bright, but they are saturated, rich with the promise of the day to come. At midday, the sun is a harsh, overhead interrogator. It floods the canyon with direct, white light, bleaching out some of the subtlety but revealing the full, brazen intensity of the reds and oranges. This is when the canyon feels most solid, most monumental, its colors declaring themselves with confidence and power. In the depths of a slot canyon, this is when the magic unfolds. The harsh overhead light cannot reach the floor directly, but instead bounces from wall to wall in a series of reflections. This reflected light becomes soft, diffuse, and incredibly colored. It picks up the iron oxide reds and magnifies them, making the sandstone walls appear to glow from within with a deep, luminous, ethereal light. It is like standing inside a kaleidoscope. But it is at sunset that the canyon stages its most breathtaking performance. The low-angle sun now strikes the canyon walls directly, setting them ablaze. The long wavelengths of red and orange light dominate the atmosphere, and they resonate perfectly with the iron-rich rocks, igniting them in a fire that seems to come from inside the stone. The cliffs don't just reflect the sunset, they amplify it, burning with an intensity that can feel almost supernatural. Then, as the sun finally dips below the horizon, the show enters its final act. The afterglow, or alpenglow, can set the very clouds above the canyon on fire, which then reflect a softer,
Rose-colored light back down onto the rocks, a final,
gentle caress before the darkness falls. And in the darkness, a new artist takes over. The moon. Its cool, silvery light transforms the canyon into a monochromatic dreamscape, a world of sharp black shadows and soft blue-white highlights. The colors are gone, but the forms remain, mysterious and silent. This daily transformation is what makes a canyon a living work of art. It is never the same twice. The same wall that blazed crimson at sunset will be a soft, muted pink under a cloudy sky. A summer thunderstorm will darken the rocks to a deep, bruised purple, while a dusting of winter snow will provide a stunning white contrast to the red rock. To witness this is to understand that a canyon's beauty is not a passive quality, but an active relationship, a lifelong dialogue between the immutable chemistry of the stone and the transient, ever-changing nature of light. It teaches us that perception is everything, that the value of a thing is not just in what it is, but in how it is seen. The canyon holds its deep time history in its colored layers, and then every single day it offers that history up to the light, asking only that we pause and look and see the art it has been patiently creating for millions of years. The story of a canyon is often told from the moment of its breathtaking grandeur. We stand at the rim, we gasp at the depth, we marvel at the towering walls. But this is merely the middle of the story. To truly understand the epic of erosion, we must pull the camera back, far back, to see the entire narrative arc, from the flat, unassuming beginning to the quiet, subdued end. For a canyon is not a permanent feature. It is a magnificent transient stage in the long, patient journey of a landscape from a high plateau to a low plain. It is the planet's most dramatic act of unbuilding. Our epic begins not with a canyon, but with its opposite, a plateau, a vast, flat, elevated expanse of land, often raised by the immense, slow-motion forces of tectonics. It is a blank page, a pristine tableland. From a distance it appears featureless, static, and eternal. But this is an illusion. The moment the land is lifted, it is sentenced to erosion. The uplift provides the potential energy. Gravity provides the inevitable pull. The stage is set for the drama to begin. The first act is gentle, almost imperceptible. Rain falls on the plateau. At first, it soaks in or forms shallow, meandering streams that leave little mark. But as the land continues to rise, or as the streams find a slight weakness, the process accelerates. A stream cuts a little deeper, steepening its banks. The steeper banks become unstable, slumping into the stream, providing it with more abrasive tools. The stream, now more powerful, cuts down faster. A positive feedback loop is born. More erosion leads to steeper slopes, which leads to more erosion. A V-shaped valley is carved, the first honest sign that the plateau is being dissected. This is the adolescence of the canyon. The valleys deepen and begin to connect, like tributaries joining a main story. The once continuous plateau is now cross-cut by a network of growing gashes. The highest, most resistant rock remains as flat-topped mesas, smaller tablelands that are remnants of the original plateau. As the mesas erode further, they become buttes, those iconic, solitary towers of rock that stand like sentinels guarding the memory of the former landscape. The buttes themselves, under relentless attack, will eventually whittle down into spires and then, finally, into piles of rubble at their bases. This is the canyon's prime, the stage we most easily recognize and celebrate. The river has carved down to its base level, and the lateral erosion of the walls is now the dominant force. The canyon is at its deepest and most dramatic, but even at its peak magnificence, the end is already in sight. The very process that created its grandeur is also sealing its fate, for the walls cannot stand forever. The relentless work of rain, ice, wind, and gravity is to wear them down. The steep cliffs retreat year by year, millimeter by millimeter. The canyon begins to widen. The dramatic, vertical drops soften into sloping talus aprons, covered in the debris of the retreating cliffs. The sharp, narrow V of the river valley evolves into a broader, more open amphitheater. The canyon is slowly, inexorably, being filled in by its own remains. The river itself begins to change. Its gradient lessens as the land around it is worn down. It loses its cutting power and begins to meander lazily across a widening valley floor, no longer carving down but instead depositing sediment, building a floodplain. The once powerful sculptor is now becoming a gentle painter, laying down broad strokes of sand and silt. The final act of this epic is one of quiet surrender. The mighty canyon walls, once miles apart and a mile high, have now retreated so far that they are mere rolling hills. The river meanders across a wide, flat plain, its energy spent. The last remnants of the original plateau are gone, reduced to a few low, rounded hills that are themselves quickly disappearing. The landscape has come full circle. What was once a high, flat plateau is now a low, flat plain. The epic of erosion is complete. The continent has been planned down, its history stripped away and carried to the sea. This is the great cycle of landscapes. It is a story of creation through destruction. The canyon is not a mistake or a wound. It is the most dramatic and beautiful phase of this cycle. It is the planet's way of recycling itself. The material that once formed a high plateau is carried grain by grain to the ocean, where it may one day be compressed into new rock, lifted into a new plateau, and begin the cycle all over again. To understand this epic is to gain a humbling perspective on time. The lifespan of a canyon encompasses millions of years. Human civilization is a blink in this timeline. The pyramids were built yesterday. The last ice age was a recent event. This perspective does not diminish us.
It liberates us.
It places our worries and our triumphs within a grand, soothing context. The canyon, in its glorious prime, is a lesson in impermanence.
Its beauty is fierce and profound precisely because it is fleeting.
It teaches us that endings are not tragedies, but transformations. That from the highest plateau, a canyon is born. And from the deepest canyon, a plain will eventually emerge. It is the epic of erosion, a story of how the earth remakes itself, written in the silent, patient language of stone, water, and time. For all their grandeur on Earth, canyons are not solely a terrestrial phenomenon. They are a universal expression of geology, a testament to the simple, powerful principles of force, erosion, and time. When we look beyond our world, we find that our canyons are but local examples of a pattern repeated across the solar system, and undoubtedly the cosmos. These alien landscapes are both eerily familiar and profoundly strange, reflecting the same fundamental processes, but operating under different rules with different tools and on scales that dwarf our own. They are mirrors that reflect our world back at us, yet show us something utterly other. The champion of alien canyons, the title holder in the solar system, is without question Valles Marineris on Mars. To call it a canyon is almost an insult. It is a monstrous gash across the face of the red planet, a geological wound so vast it can be seen from Earth with a modest telescope. The numbers defy comprehension. Over 4,000 kilometers long, 200 kilometers wide, and up to 7 kilometers deep. The entire Grand Canyon could be dropped into it, and it would be lost like a small stream in a great valley. Valles Marineris is not a river canyon in the traditional sense. While water likely played a role in its later history, it is believed to have begun as a tectonic crack, a colossal rupture in the planet's crust as the Tharsis volcanic region bulged upward billions of years ago. It is a scar from the birth pangs of the planet itself, later widened by landslides and perhaps by catastrophic floods of liquid water that may have surged through its depths in a wetter, ancient Martian past. To stand on its rim would be to witness a landscape of terrifying silent desolation, a monument to planetary forces on a scale we can scarcely imagine. But Mars holds other, more subtle canyon secrets. Its surface is etched with thousands of smaller, sinuous channels, valley networks that spiderweb across the ancient highlands. These look strikingly like river valleys on Earth, suggesting a time, billions of years ago, when rain fell and rivers flowed on Mars, carving their paths into the rusty rock. They are the ghosts of lost rivers, the fossilized remnants of a warmer, wetter climate, making them some of the most compelling evidence that Mars was once a world not entirely unlike our own. We find canyons in the frozen reaches of the solar system, two carved not by water or tectonics, but by liquid methane. On Saturn's moon Titan, a world shrouded in a thick orange haze, the rules are different. It is far too cold for liquid water, but rivers and lakes of liquid methane and ethane flow across its surface. The Cassini spacecraft mapped channels and canyons that weave through Titan's landscape, carved by these alien hydrocarbons. The process is hydrologically familiar. A liquid carves a path through a substrate, but the ingredients are utterly alien. It is a hauntingly Earth-like landscape built from a different recipe, a cryogenic echo of our own river systems. Even the tiny, icy world of Pluto out in the Kuiper Belt reveals its own canyon story. Images from the New Horizons probe show a great, icy plain known as Sputnik Planitia, bordered by giant cliffs and troughs. Some of these are tectonic, but others show signs of erosion by flowing nitrogen ice. On Pluto, solid nitrogen glaciers behaving like slow-moving cold rivers may have carved into the water ice bedrock, creating valleys and canyons in slow motion. It is geology at 230 degrees Celsius, a slow, frozen ballet of erosion that operates over millennia. These alien canyons teach us several profound lessons. First, they demonstrate the universality of physical laws. Gravity, the tendency of liquids to flow downhill, the mechanics of fracture and erosion. These principles hold true from the sun's heat to the solar system's frozen edge. The same song is being sung but with different instruments. Second, they expand our definition of what a river can be. On Earth, it is water. On Titan, it is liquid methane. On Pluto, it may be flowing nitrogen ice. A specific compound matters less than the behavior. Wherever there is a fluid and a slope, there is the potential for carving, for sculpting, for creating a canyon, finally, and perhaps most importantly, these distant landscapes hold up a mirror to our own planet. Seeing the fossil river valleys of Mars makes us appreciate the vibrant, flowing water of our own world, not as a given, but as a precious, dynamic gift. Seeing the titanic scale of Valles Marineris humbles our own grandest landscapes, reminding us that our planet is a middleweight with geology to match. To study Earth's canyons is to love our world, but to study the canyons of other worlds is to understand it. They show us the possible outcomes, the alternative paths a planet can take. They are the what-ifs made real in rock and ice. They tell us that the processes that carved the Grand Canyon are not unique. They are a local expression of a cosmic rhythm. The forces that shape worlds are vast, creative, and operate everywhere.
Our canyons are beautiful, but they are not alone.
They have siblings, cousins, and monstrous ancestors scattered across the starry dark, each one a silent, majestic testament to the power of time and the relentless urge of nature to carve its signature into the face of worlds. We speak of canyons in terms of sight, of depth, of color, of immense vistas that stretch the eye to its limit. But to truly know a canyon, you must close your eyes.
You must listen.
For the canyon has a sound, or more precisely, it has a silence. It is not the mere absence of noise, but a presence in itself, a tangible, resonant quiet that is the true sound of depth, of time, of isolation. It is a soundscape composed of the faintest of notes, and to hear it is to understand the canyon in an entirely new way. The first thing you notice upon descending from the rim is the silencing of the human world. The constant, low-frequency hum of civilization, the distant drone of a highway, the faint buzz of electrical lines, the muffled chaos of a world always in motion, fades away. It is not just that it gets quieter. It is as if a filter has been applied, removing an entire spectrum of sound you didn't even realize was there. This is the first gift of the depths. Auditory cleansing. What remains is the natural orchestra of the canyon, and its instruments are subtle. The most constant musician is the wind, but here it does not howl or roar as it might on a bare peak. In the canyon, the wind becomes a master of nuance. It plays the walls like an instrument. As it flows over the rim and dips into the abyss, it creates harmonics. You might hear a low, resonant hum as it vibrates past a particular rock fin. A few 100 feet down, it might whistle softly through a narrow crack. High above, it might moan gently as it passes over an arch. The wind doesn't blow in the canyon.
It plays the canyon.
Its song is a constant, ethereal reminder of the immense space above you. Then there is the water. If a river runs through the canyon, its sound is the heartbeat of the place. But even this is transformed by the acoustics of the stone. The roar of a rapid doesn't just come from ahead of you. It surrounds you, reflecting off the walls, amplifying and echoing until the sound seems to emanate from the very rock itself. In quieter stretches, you hear the liquid chuckle of water swirling around a boulder, the gentle lap against a sandy bank. Small, intimate sounds that are magnified in the stillness. In the side canyons, you might hear the sporadic plink, plink of water dripping from a seeping spring, each drop a perfect, clear note in the immense quiet. The life of the canyon adds its own punctuation to the silence. The call of a canyon wren, that cascading, melancholy whistle, is the canyon's signature melody. It doesn't just break the silence, it gives it shape and meaning. The rustle of a lizard scurrying through dry leaves is a sudden, sharp percussion. The distant cry of a hawk soaring on the thermals high above is a lonely, fading call that only emphasizes the vastness of the space it travels through. These are not interruptions, but essential notes in the composition. But the most profound sound is the silence itself. It is a heavy, velvety silence that settles on your shoulders like a physical weight. It is the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears. It is the sound of your own breath, a rhythmic tide that suddenly seems incredibly loud. This silence is not empty. It is full. It is full of time. It is the sound of millions of years of patient erosion, of slow, relentless change that makes no audible noise. It is the sound of the rock itself holding its breath. This deep silence has a psychological effect. At first, it can be unsettling. We are so unaccustomed to it that the mind rebels, seeking stimulation. But if you sit with it, a transformation occurs. The silence begins to feel like a presence. It becomes a listener. Your thoughts, which usually race and chatter, begin to slow down. They stretch out to fill the space. Problems that seemed immense on the surface shrink to their proper size in this vast, quiet context. The silence becomes a medium for introspection, a clear pool in which to see your own reflection. The acoustics of a canyon are unique. Sound behaves differently here. A single clap of your hands can echo back and forth between the walls, repeating itself until it fades into nothingness. A whispered word can travel astonishingly far, clear and sharp, carried by the still air and the reflective stone. This teaches you a new kind of respect for sound. You become more careful with your noise, more aware of the impact it has on the sacred quiet. You start to whisper, To experience the soundscape of a canyon is to understand that silence is not a void, but a habitat. It is the native state of this deep, ancient world. The occasional sounds, the wind, the water, the bird, are the events, but the silence is the permanent resident. It is the canvas upon which these temporary sounds are painted. In our modern world, we are drowning in noise. We seek it out, we create it, we wear it like an armor against our own thoughts. The canyon offers the antidote. It offers a silence so deep and so pure that it feels like a kind of healing.
It washes the noise from your mind.
It reminds you that before there were cities, before there were machines, before there was speech, this was the sound of the world, the wind on the stone, the water on the rock, and the immense patient
And loving silence in between. It is the sound of the earth remembering itself.
And if you listen closely enough in the deepest silence of the depths, you might just remember yourself too. There is a human impulse that is as old as our species, a pull that has guided our footsteps across plains, over mountains, and beyond the horizons of the sea.
It is the allure of the unknown.
The simple, irresistible need to see what lies around the next bend, beyond the next ridge, at the bottom of the deepest gorge. And nowhere on earth is this call more potent, more deeply felt, than in the presence of a canyon. For a canyon is the ultimate geographical question mark.
It is a landscape that does not give up its secrets easily.
It hides itself, promising that within its depths lie worlds unseen, stories untold, and a silence so profound it can only be earned. This allure is not merely about conquest or the tagging of a summit. It is about revelation. A canyon is a closed book. To explore it is to slowly, carefully open its pages. From the rim you can only see so much. The canyon teases you. It offers a glimpse of a twisting side channel, a flash of a hidden waterfall, the suggestion of an arch spanning a chasm you cannot see from above. It creates a map in your mind filled with blank spaces, and the human spirit is fundamentally unable to resist the urge to fill them in. What is down there? What does the world look like from the very bottom? What lives in that shadowy grotto? The canyon whispers these questions on the wind, and we feel compelled to go and find the answers. The history of canyon exploration is a tapestry woven from many threads. For indigenous peoples, exploration was not a matter of discovery, but of deep, intimate knowing. They were not the first to see the canyon. They were the first to understand it. Their exploration was born of necessity and spirituality, learning every seep spring, every animal trail, every safe passage and sacred site. Their knowledge was the original map, written in stories and songs passed down through generations. Then came the era of the great surveys, the John Wesley Powells of the world, who bundled into wooden boats and cast themselves into the roaring unknown of the Colorado River. Their exploration was an act of both scientific curiosity and raw courage. They were literally mapping the blank spots on the continent, and their journals are filled with a mixture of terror, awe, and the thrilling realization that they were seeing what no human eyes had ever beheld. For them, the allure was the allure of the first time, of adding to the sum total of human knowledge. Today, the exploration continues, though the blank spots are fewer. Now, the unseen is more subtle. It is the quest to find a new, unmapped slot canyon, so narrow it has no name. It is the determination to reach a hanging garden, vibrant with life, hidden behind a waterfall at the end of a grueling trek. It is the patient waiting for the perfect light to illuminate a chamber deep within Antelope Canyon, a moment of beauty that may only last for minutes each day. The tools have changed, from handmade ropes to satellite GPS and advanced climbing gear, but the essence remains the same, the desire to witness the unseen. This journey into the unknown is as much internal as it is external. The physical challenge of a canyon, the descent, the climb, the swim through cold, dark pools, is a test of endurance. It strips away the non-essential. In the depths, you are confronted with your own vulnerability, your own strength, and your place within the immense scale of deep time. The exploration of the canyon becomes an exploration of the self. The unseen you are ultimately seeking might just be a part of yourself that only the silence and the struggle can reveal. Yet the true magic of the canyon's allure is that it can never be fully extinguished. No matter how many maps are drawn, how many trails are built, how many photographs are taken, the canyon always holds something back. The light will always change, revealing a new hue in the rock. A flash flood will rearrange the boulders on the floor, creating a new landscape overnight. A fallen tree will create a new bridge. A rockfall will close an old passage. The canyon is a living, changing entity. You can never step into the same canyon twice. This is why we return. The first exploration satisfies the initial curiosity, but it only deepens the mystery. You realize that to know a canyon is not to conquer it, but to develop a relationship with it. Each return visit is a conversation. You notice smaller details, the way a particular flower grows in a crack, the specific echo of a certain side canyon, the feel of the sun warming a particular slab of rock in the afternoon. The allure of the unseen, then, is not a one-time call, but a lifelong invitation. It is an understanding that the greatest mysteries are not those that are solved, but those that are endlessly unfolding. The canyon does not exist to be solved like a puzzle. It exists to be experienced like a symphony, with new movements and nuances revealed each time you listen. To explore a canyon is to answer a primal call.
It is to acknowledge that we are, at our core, a species of seekers.
We are drawn to the edge of the map, to the bend in the river, to the depths of the chasm, because we know in our bones that the most beautiful truths are often hidden. They are not lying in plain sight on the sun-baked plateau. They are waiting in the cool, shadowy depths in the unseen worlds, patient and silent for those willing to make the descent. They are the rewards for those who are still lured by the unknown. We are taught to see canyons as the epitome of permanence and strength. Their walls of solid rock, their immense depth, their sheer scale all speak of an unassailable eternal presence. They seem to be the very definition of resilience. But this is a grand illusion. The very fact that they are carved from stone, a material we associate with endurance, belies a profound and paradoxical truth. Canyons are among the most fragile landscapes on Earth. Their grandeur is not a sign of invincibility, but of exquisite hard-won balance, a balance that is surprisingly easy to upset. This fragility begins with the very thing that makes them beautiful: time. A canyon is a monument to slow, patient processes. It takes millions of years of consistent, delicate work to create a single arch, to polish a single wall, to establish a single ancient hanging garden. But what takes an eternity to create can be undone in a moment. A single, misguided action can erase millennia of geological artistry. This disparity in time scales is the heart of a canyon's vulnerability. It is like a master painter spending a lifetime on a single canvas, only to have it scarred by a careless swipe of a hand. The fragility is most visible in the smallest details. Take the cryptobiotic soil crust, that living skin of cyanobacteria, moss, and lichen that holds the desert floor together. It is the foundation of the desert ecosystem, preventing erosion and fixing nitrogen. Yet a single footprint can destroy a century of its growth. The tracks of an off-road vehicle or even a careless hiker leaving a designated trail can create scars that persist for generations. Initiating gullies that will widen with every rain, or consider the silent, hidden ecosystems of seeping springs. These are oases in the rock, where water slowly percolates through porous sandstone to emerge on a cliff face, supporting delicate ferns, rare flowers, and colonies of insects and amphibians found nowhere else. Their entire existence is predicated on a precise, delicate hydrological balance. A drop in the water table from distant groundwater pumping, or a shift in the canyon structure from seismic activity, can turn these springs off like a tap. When the water stops, the entire micro-world it supported vanishes with it. The cultural artifacts left behind by ancient peoples are another layer of this fragility. A granary built into a cliff alcove by the ancestral Puebloans has survived for nearly 1,000 years, protected by the dry air and the overhanging rock. Yet, a single act of vandalism, the brush of a backpack against a wall, or even the oils from a human hand, can degrade irreplaceable pictographs in a matter of years. The silence that has preserved them for centuries is broken in an instant. Even the grandest features are vulnerable. The iconic arch that has stood for millennia is not permanent. Its strength is a tense equilibrium between the hardness of the rock and the relentless forces of gravity and erosion. Every grain of sand blown away by the wind, every expansion and contraction from freezing and thawing brings it closer to its eventual collapse. While this is a natural process, human-induced vibrations from nearby mining, heavy machinery, or even constant low-frequency noise can accelerate this decay, destabilizing the delicate dance of forces that holds the arch aloft. Perhaps the greatest modern threat is the alteration of a canyon's lifeblood, its water. Dams built for human water storage and hydroelectric power have fundamentally changed the nature of many canyon rivers. They trap the sediment that was the river's cutting and building tools. They release clear, cold water from the depths of reservoirs, which lacks the seasonal warmth and nutrient-rich silt that native ecosystems evolved with. They flatten the natural flood cycles that once scoured and rejuvenated the canyon, preventing the river from doing its ancient, essential work. The river below a dam is often a ghost of its former self, its rhythm broken, its power diminished. The canyon, in response, becomes static, frozen in time, its processes arrested. This fragility is a lesson in humility. It forces us to shift our perspective. We must learn to see the canyon not as a rugged, indestructible monument, but as a living, breathing museum. Its artifacts are not behind glass. They are the walls themselves, the soils, the water, the air. Every single element is part of an interconnected whole that has achieved a miraculous, slow momentum balance. To visit a canyon, then, is to be granted a privilege. It is an invitation to walk through a gallery where the art is still being created, at a pace too slow for our eyes to see, but at a rate our actions can easily destroy. It asks us to tread lightly, to speak softly, and to listen more than we look. The delicate balance of a canyon teaches us that true strength is not about being unbreakable. It is about persistence in the face of constant, gentle change. The canyon's fragility is not a weakness. It is a measure of its preciousness. It is a reminder that the most enduring things in our world are often the most easily disrupted, and that our role is not to conquer these landscapes, but to protect the delicate billion-year-old ping heng they represent. Our charge is to ensure that the slow, patient work of time is allowed to continue, undisturbed, for the millions of years to come. We have journeyed together to the rim, and we have descended into the depths. We have traced the work of water and wind, felt the prying force of ice, and witnessed the titanic heave of tectonics. We have seen how canyons are born from violence, sculpted by patience, and inhabited by the resilient. We have understood their fragility. But now, at the end of our journey, we must return to the simplest, most profound truth of all. A canyon is more than a feature of geology. It is a narrator. It is the Earth's most eloquent, eternal storyteller, and its language is written in stone, water, and time. To listen to the stone is to learn a new way of hearing. It is to understand that the story is not shouted but whispered. It is told in the subtle gradation of color, in a cliff face, a shift from red to ochre that speaks of a changing climate 200 million years ago. It is told in the smooth, flowing curve of a wall, a frozen wave that recounts the relentless, swirling passage of countless flash floods. It is told in the jagged, sharp edge of a recent rockslide, a reminder that the story is still being written and that the next sentence can be sudden and dramatic. Every layer is a chapter. The coarse, gritty sandstone tells of ancient windswept dunes. The smooth, fossil-rich limestone sings of a warm, shallow sea. The hard, dark, metamorphic rock at the bottom murmurs the secrets of mountains so old they have no name, mountains that were born, lived, and were worn to dust long before the continents found their current shapes. The canyon doesn't just show us these stories, it forces us to read them in order, from the deep, ancient past at its base to the more recent past at its rim. It is a chronological autobiography of the planet, laid bare. But the canyon's story is not only about the distant past, it is also about the present moment. The river running along the floor is the narrator's voice, a constant, flowing commentary on the ongoing saga. Its volume rises and falls with the seasons, whispering during the drought and roaring during the spring melt, but it never falls completely silent. It is the persistent present tense verb in the canyon's long sentence. The wind is the storyteller's breath, sighing through the cliffs, moaning across the fins, and whistling through the arches. It carries the dust of eroded continents, the scent of desert rain, and the calls of the raven and the wren, weaving them into the narrative. The light is the mood, changing the tone of the story from the soft, hopeful gold of dawn to the fiery, dramatic passion of sunset, to the cool, silent mystery of moonlight. And what is the story about? It is an epic on a scale we can barely comprehend. It is a story of creation and destruction, not as opposites, but as partners in an endless dance. It is the story of continents colliding and oceans opening. It is the story of life emerging, evolving, facing catastrophe and blossoming again. It is a story of profound change measured in millimeters per year and of sudden catastrophic transformation in the blink of a geological eye. Most importantly, the canyon's story is our story. The iron that rusts to give the rock its red hue is the same iron that runs in our blood. The calcium that forms the limestone was once part of the shells of creatures that swam in those ancient seas, and now it is part of our own bones. We are not separate from the narrative. We are characters within it. Our own brief lives, our cultures, our civilizations are but a single recent sentence in this immense book. The canyon humbles us with this scale, but it also connects us. It gives us a place in the cosmos, a lineage that stretches back to the very formation of the planet. The canyon, as the eternal storyteller, never finishes its tale. The river continues to cut. The walls continue to weather. The slow, patient forces of erosion continue their work, ensuring that the story will have new twists, new characters, and new settings millions of years from now. It is a story without an end. Our role in this is simple and sacred. We are the audience. We are the listeners. We are the creatures who emerged with the capacity to understand the story, to stand in awe of it, and to feel its meaning resonate deep within us. We are tasked with its preservation to ensure that the pages of this stone diary are not torn out or defaced, so that future generations may also come to listen. So the next time you find yourself in the presence of a canyon, do not just look, listen, sit quietly on the sun-warmed rock. Place your hand on the stone, feel the immensity of time it holds. Hear the wind narrate the passage of eons. Watch the light turn the pages of the day. The eternal storyteller is speaking. It has been speaking for billions of years.
It tells of where we came from, and it hints at the long future that will unfold long after we are gone.
It offers a perspective that can soothe our smallest anxieties and ignite our greatest wonders. It tells us that we are part of something vast, beautiful, and enduring. All we have to do is listen.